Oh, okay.
She's going to say that it might be or she's going to want to reapply, and she wants to make sure she'll have a chance.
One of them's a check. I like checks.
Okay, you want to do it under public comment?
Whenever she wants
That
to.
makes sense.
Nope, here, Bruce.
That makes sense.
Evening, Bruce.
Good.
Boy, you got here just in time.
I know.
It's 7 o'clock, time to start special meeting of interviews for the road commission. Call the meeting to order and we'll rise for the pledge, please.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Stepka,
He's
Excused.
I guess.
Richardson,
Here.
Axbauer. Here. Inman,
Here.
Hooper.
Here.
Friend. Here. Lease.
Present.
Chairman Thomas.
Here. Is there any additions to the agenda?
I would move that, I would like to add a discussion of adding a discussion on scheduling a public hearing for increasing the road commission from 3 to 5 members.
Support.
On December
moved.
17th,
Been moved, is it
Second.
15th.
supported? Discussion?
Didn't we just add that this morning on next week's meeting?
I asked it to be added
Agenda.
to the agenda, but then I consulted the calendar and I'm concerned about the timing because of the necessary lead time.
Because he has to have 28 days between,
That's 28 days.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
And we moved our Ways and Means meeting up until the 17th because of the holiday.
okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Now it's time for a first public comment. Does anybody want to speak?
Good evening. My name is Lynn Moon, and I did submit an application for road commission, and then I withdrew it temporarily. I am right in the middle of the big building downtown, and I think I said that if you are going to open it up again and add more commissioners, I would be very interested. But I respectfully withdraw my my application this time and hope that in the next couple of weeks when you open it back up, I'll be done with the big project. You'll be proud, and I'll come and do my thing for submitting an application to the road commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to interview each person for 15 minutes, and I'm going to kind of hold it as close as we can to 15 minutes because I want everybody to have the same fair opportunity. And you'll be asked a series of questions, and I hope that the board doesn't feel constrained to the questions here, and if they want to ask more, that's fine. So, with that, we'll begin with Carl Brown. And we'll start down there and come this way.
Good evening, girl. How are you?
Sonny.
Tell me how you see the responsibility as a road commissioner in regard to the day-to-day operations of the road commission.
He has a responsibility to make sure that the budget and the master plan of the road commission is followed through the other commissioners, with Mary as the head of the road commission, taking their guidance and knowledge and implementing it. And as far as budget issues, they are responsible for making sure that they stay within their budget and don't exceed that.
Thank you.
Was that kind of like number 2 that you had, or?
No,
all right.
That
Wasn't kind of like one
That was
either?
just kind of mine. No, it
All
wasn't
right.
one either. That
All
was
right.
mine.
I guess I'll start with item 2, I guess. And I think you sort of touched on it. Could you give us explain to us your understanding of the job of a road commissioner?
Road commissioner, in the way it's set up now, it's an appointed position through the county board, so they act at the will of the county board to implement the policies that they bring down to them, but also implement the policies, number one, as a public servant, to spend their money wisely and maintain safe roads in the county.
Okay, thank you.
Carl, 2 questions rolled into one. What do you see as the number 1 priority to be accomplished if you're appointed to the road commission? And, well, we'll do that one first.
Right now, with the economy, well, and not even right now, but even in the past, I think the number 1 responsibility is how do we come up with the funding to maintain the road system that we have, and how do we disperse it through the county equally, or which roads need the most attention first. I think that's the primary thing, I think, at this point in time. And I know a lot of people that I've talked to out there, the road conditions are a big concern to them. So I think that's probably the number 1 priority that I see right now.
Okay, and do you have any experience with roads, road building, road maintenance, et cetera?
I worked from 1992 through 2002 for road contractors, construction companies. I worked on Garfield Road when it expanded from 2 lanes to 4 lanes from South Airport to Hammond. I've worked on a lot of other site works out of the county on a lot of road projects, whether they be new construction or reconstruct through crush and shape type jobs, or milling off and paving back in. And I also have worked on a lot of water and sewer projects in those 10 years.
Thank you.
Sort of a 2-part question. Did you support the road millage that was on the ballot last week? And whether you did or did not support it, why do you think it failed?
I did support it. The reason, I think there was a couple of reasons that it failed. Number 1, the timing with the economy the way it is. Anybody, no matter what the percentage of a mill is, it's a hard sell right now. And I know it's a hard sell right now. And I think also I've been to the last couple of meetings at the Road Commission, and I think the notion that they had a big windfall of money and they took it to buy new vehicles and give raises and that, I think that it kind of soured some of the voters that maybe would have voted for that. I think that they had the conception that we don't have money to fix the roads, but we got money for raises, and I think that was another reason that failed.
Carl, do you agree with the direction that the present road commission is taking? And if not, what direction do you think the road commission should take? I guess that's the easiest way to say it.
Well, I know right now where they've just finished up the Keystone Road, which I mentioned earlier tonight, that I don't think a lot of people are using it, really realizing what the road commission has done on that project. I think that the ability to get federal funds and state funds to do these major projects, I think, is the right direction that they're going. And then I know that they've had the discussion at the last couple on road maintenance, and I think we really have to maintain what we have. to the best ability that we can with the dollars we have to spend. I think that direction, and I think they're heading that direction, at least that's my feeling.
So you would focus on maintenance?
I would focus on maintenance on what we have. I mean, there is, you can always put more roads in to ease traffic burden, but I don't think at this present time, I think we need to, with the dollars that are out there, I think we need to maintain what we have to the best of the ability we can.
Okay, I have a two-part question. Why should we appoint you to this position?
I believe that with my background in road construction, and currently I own my own business, I think my knowledge of both on how a business has to run and how road construction works, I think with the knowledge that I have, I believe that, plus working in Grand Traverse County, I work all over the county and see all of the projects going on. I think I'm pretty well versed in the abilities to do this job and know what it takes to build the roads and how to run a business.
Okay, second part, what do you bring to the commission that will make it a more effective organization?
Well, I think basically, I think a lot of it is my business and road building knowledge. I think that I understand what it takes to maintain roads and to build roads and what it takes to build safe ones, and I think the knowledge of the construction and the business part is what I think really I can benefit the road commission with.
Hi.
Hi.
Are you aware of the benefits, the salary, and the health care that go with the road commission position?
When I interviewed before, I did, but at the present time, I don't know what that is, to be honest with you.
There is a salary and there is a health care component as well that is offered to you. Will you be accepting the health care component?
Possibly,
Okay. Do you currently attend road commission meetings?
yes.
And how long have you followed road commission meetings and issues?
Well, since July, I've been going to the meetings, and I've been following the paper, which I know at the last, I think it was either the last meeting, I guess it was, that there was some issues brought up with misrepresentation of what had happened. And I mean, I follow it through the Record Eagle all the time and realize that it's not necessarily always the way things have happened.
So did you think the categorization that you mentioned earlier of the road commission receiving a windfall and spending it on raises, do you think that that's accurate?
After hearing the explanation on where those monies came from, I think it was money that they didn't realize they were going to get through that insurance rebate, and I do believe that it was that their explanation was correct.
Okay, last question. What is your understanding of the difficulty funding local roads which serve a large population, large collector roads? And what are some of your ideas to address those funding difficulties?
Well, the millage not passing was definitely on the local roads I mean, that was going to benefit those, and now that's gone. I'm not sure how to do it on a township by township basis is I don't know if we could bring all the townships together to do that, but every township has road issues, and I know a lot of the funding partial funding comes through these townships, and I think that the road commission needs to work with the townships to see how, whether through millage or through their general fund, to fund those.
Thank you.
How important would or should public input be on your road commission's way of doing?
Well, I think public input is always important, whether it be positive or negative. And sometimes, and I think all of us, you make your mind up to something, and then when somebody comes and gives you a different point of view, you step back and rethink maybe your thoughts through their viewpoint. I think public input is very important. Whether it be good, negative or positive, either way, and I think, somebody being critical, if they have other than just to be negative, If they have a legitimate reason for that, and, you know, I think you have to listen.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Carl, you mentioned a minute ago that you understand that the townships and the road commission have to participate jointly in many of our local road projects
Right.
or by special assessment district. Do you see us trying to set aside money, matching monies that we can offer the townships to do those projects? You know, currently, if the township came to us with a project, we probably couldn't afford to pay for it.
Right. Well, I know, excuse me, I live in Fife Lake Township, and I know I take Town Line, which is right on the line, and I talked to both Fred Joels and Marie Dean when there was a section there that did not get the chip seal like it was done because it was falling apart. And I know that Fife Lake Township is a little bit on the poorer side of the townships, and Kingsley had kicked in a pretty good amount of money for that to fix that section. And I think that if there was the abilities or funds could be found, I think townships would be more willing to match and upgrade their roads if the monies are there. If they have the monies and they know that there's going to be a match, I think that I think it could be sold. I'm not going to say it's going to be an easy sell, but I think it, I know there's a portion in Fife Lake Township that I drive that is just absolutely, it needs something done, and I know that those funds have to be found at some point in time.
Carl, do you presently sit on any other boards or committees?
At present, just with the church that I go to at this point in time, I'm no longer on the Evergreen Cemetery or the Kingsley Sportsman's Club's boards.
Thank you.
Ross?
The state legislature and the governor signed into law recently a policy establishing complete streets, statewide. They haven't quite filled in all the details yet, but would you support the implementation of a complete streets policy where appropriate in the county?
Without knowledge of exactly what that is, I don't want to say yes or no until I would have more knowledge of what we're talking about. If it's to benefit the county residents or that, I would say yes. And if it was a safety thing to benefit that, I would say yes. But without really knowing exactly what that is, I wouldn't say yes or no.
Carl, who do you believe should set the priorities of the road commission? The townships, the public, the road commission, staff?
Well, I think it should be a joint effort, I think, because I don't, and I'm not going to say that any one group should set that, but I think input from all should guide that decision. I don't think that just I don't think it should be a dictatorship where one group says this is the way it needs to be.
Anybody happy?
Yep.
Oh,
Thank you.
15-minute time schedule, aren't we?
One other quick question.
Sure.
Could you explain a little bit your theory on the land use planning impacting transportation affecting land use planning?
Land use as far as like subdivisions or industrial parks or?
Yeah.
I know each township has their master plan where you are zoned appropriately, and I'm thinking that a lot of that has already been taken into account as far as traffic flows based on population, and not to say that given time that doesn't need to change. And I guess I'm not quite sure what you're looking for here.
Context-sensitive design with roads. Are you supportive of context-sensitive designs? Are you familiar with those?
I am not.
Okay.
I am not.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
All set?
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Next is Kevin Andrus.
Good evening.
You see, you get the advantage because you already heard the questions.
I got like, there's the cleanup, you know, he's got,
there you
he's
go.
got 6 chances to hear.
Kevin, how do you see your responsibility as a road commissioner in regard to the day-to-day operations of the road commission?
Sure. You know, the road commissioners, you know, as an oversight, as an administrative policy maker, I don't see there's any real day-to-day involvement with the road commission. It's more from directing and influencing those day-to-day operations through the policies that the road commission sets in place and hands down to Mary to implement.
Kevin, what would you do to further enhance the relationship between the road commission, the townships, the villages, and the city?
In the city? You know, it's been my experience that the road commission historically hasn't necessarily been a collaborative body with other governmental agencies in the area. And there definitely needs to be somebody on the board that can reach out and meet those other communities. I mean, we're obviously here, the road commission's here to serve all of the residents of Grand Traverse County, and that includes the townships and the people within the city and the people that use, you know, all of the roads. There definitely needs to be some improvement in the relationships, I think, in the road commission coming together with and working with those other governmental agencies to really to do what we need to do, and is to protect and keep our roads in a working order.
All right, thank you.
How you doing, Kevin?
Good. How are you, Larry?
Good. 2 quick questions. The number one priority if you're appointed to the road commission?
The number one priority, you know, with my background in engineering and my degree in highway design and pavement rehabilitation, driving around the county, I think there are some issues that we need to address, I think, with some of the maintenance of our roads, some of the practices that we have. I know, and I've spoken with individuals at the road commission. I understand funding is tight, and there isn't a lot of money there, and you can only do what you can do with the money that you have. But I think the money that we do have, even though it is small, we need to make sure that we're spending that money efficiently and effectively. And just because we have light money doesn't mean that the work that we're providing kind of gets spread thin, and possibly the care that's taken with some of the maintenance that we do is lacking because, well, there's a reduce in funding. So perhaps it's really concentrating on the maintenance program that we have, and with the money that we have, making sure that we're getting the biggest bang for our buck, that the projects that we're doing are effectively maintaining the roads, not that we're covering road miles with the money that we have, but the miles that we do cover, we're maintaining well and getting the biggest bang for our buck. That, and, you know, a PR standpoint, I think there's some help that the road commission needs from a PR standpoint, and kind of being out there, you know, if it's with the paper, if it's with the public, if it's with other governmental agencies. I think there needs to be an ambassador on the board that's helping to carry that message and that image.
What experience do you have in road building and/or road maintenance?
Road building, road maintenance. Well, again, I've got a degree in highway design and pavement rehabilitation. I have interned at the road commission during college. One summer on the crew, 2 summers in the engineering department. I have 10 years of practicing civil engineering here in town, where 90% of my business that I conducted was in residential development design, so designing and constructing roads. I don't know what the percentage is, but a percentage of them that were then turned over to the county into the public road system. So I feel I have an extensive background and knowledge, and from a technical standpoint, with the issues that the road commission deals with on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi, how are you?
Did you support the road millage, firstly, and secondly, why do you think it failed?
I did not. And the reason I did not that I did not support it because I don't think that there's a road millage that's needed. One of the reasons I didn't support it, while I think a lot of the community didn't support it, was just a lack of understanding of what the plan was to use for that money. Just to go out and say, well, we're going to raise money because we're going to fix roads, in theory sounds great, but until you have a plan and that plan is presented to the public that says, here's our 5-year plan, and these are the priorities that we're going to do, and these are the projects that we're going to construct with the money that you give us, I think they would have had a better chance of getting the millage passed. But until you actually give people a roadmap, and sorry about the pun, but you give them the roadmap of saying, we're asking you to give us more money. First of all, I think you need to present to the public that you are using the money that you already get effectively and efficiently. You go out to ask for more money, you need to be very specific on what that plan is going to be. If it's a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 7-year plan, whatever it is, you need to let the public know this is exactly what we're going to do with their money. And then I think the road millage failed because I don't know if there was a lot of collaboration with other partners in the community that we could have got to support it, to go out and carry that message for us into the public. So I think that was probably why it failed.
Kevin, are you pleased with the present direction of the road commission? And if not, what would you change?
You know, I don't know if the direction of the road commission is off track. I think there are some things that we can improve on. Again, I think from a PR standpoint, the decisions that they make, I think, have been left open a little bit to be criticized by the paper, by the public. I think the intentions were correct. I just don't think that perhaps the way it was presented, it just led people to perceive that maybe it wasn't the way it really was. But as the overall direction of the road commission, I don't think that they've headed down the wrong path in the past. You know, it's a tough job. You know, it's like being the superintendent of a school district. It's like, okay, here, go do all of this, and by the way, we're cutting all your funding. So it is a tough job, I understand that, and so there just needs to be somebody that's going to help make some tough decisions moving into the future, for sure.
Okay, Kevin, I have a two-part question again. Kevin, why should we appoint you to this position?
I think you should appoint me to this position for a couple of reasons. One, my prior board experience, serving on other boards, committees. The one probably most relating to the road commission was my 3-year term on the Beta board, in which we made some pretty difficult decisions then. We had a transition with a new executive director. We went through some growing pains. We did get that all turned around, hired Tom Menzel, that was great. The funding mechanism for Beta is very similar to what it is for the road commission. So board experience, I know what it means to be on a board. I know my duties and my responsibilities are. My technical background, like I said, my education, my 10 years in engineering, I think, allowed me to have those. I can lend my experience and my expertise on a technical side. But then from a business standpoint too, being a small business owner in the community, I know what it takes to run a business and the hard decisions that have to be made. I think you need somebody that's strong, that's willed, going to do what's right, and even if it's maybe not the most popular decision, it's got to get made.
Okay, and the second part is, what do you bring to this commission that will make it a more effective organization?
Again, I think my technical experience brings a level of I think there's I think somewhat of a gap there on the current board with the technical background. My board experience, I think I can hit the road running. There's really not a lot of learning curve. I've worked for the road commission, and I've worked with the road commission on the other side of the table for 10 years in designing developments and projects and working on road projects. So I understand how the road commission works kind of inside and out, and so I think I can definitely use that to be effective immediately.
Thanks.
Hi.
Hi, Beth.
First, two follow-up questions from some of your previous answers. You mentioned collaborative efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me an example of an issue that you've been involved in where you've kind of led a collaborative effort?
A road-related one, or just any
just
board or
any board,
anything?
right.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a thinker. Junior achievement. My role is the chairman of the board for junior achievement in Northwest Michigan. Currently, there's a lot, we're a nonprofit, so there's a lot of collaboration that has to occur with nonprofits. We met with Derek Bailey, the chairman of the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, and met with him about their support for junior achievement. And instead of just asking them for a donation, we asked, well, what can we do, for the band specifically? And so we're working on a collaborative effort to work with them to put some programs specifically in place for their members, which is a little bit different of the model than what we provide to junior achievement programs that we have in elementary schools and middle schools and high schools here. We're working with them to collaborate, like I said, to provide very specific programs for their members.
Okay. Also, let's see, you talked a little bit about the road millage. What was your understanding of how they were going to spend the road millage as far as designation to local or primary roads?
That's a good question, Beth. I really don't think that was spelled out, and I don't know if I, from what was put out, if I knew how that money was necessarily going to be spent. I know it was going to be a local road millage, but again, that's a pretty broad. It's a pretty broad ask to go out to the public and say, well, we want money to fund local road projects. But, what is that? What roads? What types of projects? I think there really needed to be a plan in place. And so I just think that there was definitely a gap there from what they intended to do. Again, the intention is correct. I think the intention is right. It just wasn't relayed to the public, I don't think, correctly.
Okay. Now, are you aware of the benefits that go along with being a road commissioner?
I know there are some benefits, but I don't know what the specifics of the package are. It's not
there is a salary.
My intention of.
There is a salary and there are benefits. There is a healthcare component. Do you intend to accept the healthcare benefits?
It'd be, I don't know the specifics of it, so it would have to be something that, if appointed, I'd have to look at and talk to my wife about. We pay for, as a small business owner, we pay for our own health insurance currently. I don't know if that would have to change or not, but that would be a decision I'd have to make with my wife.
Do you currently attend road commission meetings?
I have attended a few road commission meetings sporadically and in the last couple months. I do stay on top of, just because of the nature of our business now and in my past experience with the road commission, do have a handle on where issues are and where things are without having to attend the meetings specifically.
Okay. And also, would you speak a little bit about your understanding of the difficulty funding the local type primary, the local collector roads, for lack of a better term, those local roads which serve a large population, Zimmerman Road, Rasho Road. Could you talk a little bit about the difficulties of funding those and what ideas that you might have for those?
Funding, obviously that's a difficult decision. I don't know if I have all the answers for you, tonight. But again, collaboration, there's other partners out there, if it's TART, if it's, if there's trails that could be implemented into road construction projects where you can get other interested parties to support the project, maybe to help gain, approval of a millage. People to go out there to carry your torch for you if you can collaborate with people to get other components, worked into that road project that's going to better suit the community itself. Funding, again, with the way that the road commission's funded, again, nobody wants their taxes raised, anymore. I think it's going to be necessary. I think there is going to be a need for a millage. I think there's better work that needs to be done up front before the millage goes out to the public. And then again, with the money that we do have, how do we effectively and efficiently manage that money to perhaps free up some money to do some specific projects?
Thank you.
Beth used up all my time, so,
Okay.
and I am kind of watching the clock. Does anybody have any further questions?
Kevin, what other boards or committees do you presently sit on?
I currently have another 7 months as the chairman of the board for the Junior Achievement in Northwest Michigan, which from a time standpoint is not a very time-consuming position. That's a 1 meeting a month position. I also serve on the the Chamber's Business Leadership Council, which is a one morning meeting per month. And I sit on Munson Medical Center's Biomedical Ethics Committee, which is one morning meeting a month.
Thank you.
Again, this is the complete streets question. Legislature recently passed, and the governor signed into law, legislation to adopt a complete streets policy. And, you know, is that something you'd be in favor of implementing in the county, and, where appropriate?
Where appropriate, I think that's perhaps one of the frustrations I've dealt with the Road Commission in the past with my engineering and design. You were talking about context-sensitive design. The standards, the road building standards that we currently have at the Road Commission really aren't flexible enough to give a developer or even a township the flexibility to do the project that fits a specific piece of property or a specific area. They're pretty stringent, and we need to be able to work on being able to build roads and maintain roads that fit the context of if it's our area, if it's the natural, the lay of the land specifically, and not just building roads to build roads because this is the standard that we necessarily have. So yeah, there's definitely room to be a little more flexible to fit the projects specifically for, or to fit the design specifically for that project in that area.
Kevin and I dealt with that a lot on the Planning Commission.
Yeah, right.
You're done.
Oh, thanks. I did want to ask you quickly, though. The Planning Commission, they are looking at road standards and have a subcommittee on looking at maybe potentially suggesting some changes to the road standards. Would you be in support of, reviewing what they're doing and potentially implementing some of those?
Absolutely. I was on a committee back when I was practicing. I was on a committee where we did a few years ago, and this was prior to Mary's tenure at the Road Commission, where they did put together a committee to look at road standards. And there were some changes that were made, but there's definitely still room for flexibility. Yeah.
One more.
Who do you believe should set the priorities? The Road Commission, the staff, the public, the townships?
Well, I think ultimately the priorities should be set by the board, but those priorities are set with an effort of, a collaborative effort with the people that we serve, which is the community. I mean, there's no reason why we wouldn't reach out to the people to ask them, opinions, and there's got to be other ways of reaching out to the community and getting what their recommendations are. I mean, we're into, a tech world now, and there's got to be new ways of gathering input from the community so that they can help guide the Road Commission, but eventually that's a responsibility, I would say, of the board.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Next is Neil Levesey. How are you, Neil?
Good evening.
Well, we know you already sat in this chair once before, so
I've been here before.
So, you not only know the questions that we ask, but you know the challenges that are before the Road Commission. So, I need to ask you first, how do you see your role as a road commissioner in dealing with the day-to-day operations of the Road Commission?
I think that the day-to-day operations belong to the administrative staff. I think the Road Commissions, as a group, as a commission board, set the standards and the issues that the administration will be facing. But I don't think we administer the day-to-day operation as much as we administer to the administration what the policies and our goals are.
Okay. What would you do to further enhance the relationship between the Road Commission, township, villages, and other governmental units?
We already have a commissioner that sets with the MTA or meets with MTA every first Thursday of every month, I believe. But I do believe that we need to have a commissioner attend board meetings, township board meetings, and I think there needs to be a more combined effort with townships that adjoin other townships. So when we build local roads that cross into the next township, that is a joint effort and not just one township fighting that battle by itself.
Right. Thank you.
What do you see as the number one priority of the road commission?
The number one priority of the road commission, as I see it, is a better education of the public. I think that part of the reason our millage failed, and granted, we had 43% that approved the millage, so we weren't that far off, even though I don't think the public is aware of the funding, the resources, and what the commission, where the commission, road commission gets their money. We only get 18 cents for every gallon of gas that's purchased in this state. When gas goes over $3 a gallon, gas prices, gas consumption goes down, we start getting less money instead of more money. People thought that when gas prices were up, these road commissions were getting mountains of money, and the exact opposite is the case.
What experience do you have in either building roads and or maintenance of roads?
By profession, I'm a land surveyor, and I have, over my profession, laid out and designed roads and had been on site while they do the testing to see that the roads meet the standards that are set by the County Road Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, how you doing tonight?
Good evening.
Did you support the road millage?
I did.
Okay, and I think, well, I'll ask the question. You started to answer already, but why do you think it failed? And I think I could add to that, how would you have approached it differently?
I think a better education of the public and telling them where the money comes from that the Road Commission does receive and where we're going to spend the millage money that we would get. We could point out that in, I believe it was 2007, this board in conjunction with the Road Commission set a bond, and we took, what, $6 million? $4 million? $4 million. And we improved 35 miles of road. Some was crushed and shaped, some was just resurfacing. But whatever the best way to address each individual road so we can get the most bang for our buck in putting a new surface or a better surface or a safer surface on that road.
Neil, are you pleased with the present direction of the Road Commission? If not, what would you change?
The direction of the Road Commission at this point, I guess I think they're headed in the right direction. I think there's some misunderstanding, and I think that part of it is most of it, or I should say, public perception. I don't think the Road Commission is doing as bad a job as the public thinks they are.
Okay, got two parts here. Why should we appoint you to this position?
I believe you should appoint me because I have lived in this county for my whole life. I understand I have a background in roads. I've also served on this board, on the County Road Commission board for 2 years. So my bringing me up to speed is zero. I do know that when I first went on the Road Commission board, there is a learning curve. Everybody told me, sit back, relax, pay attention, and as things start making sense to you, become more involved. I think that's true of anybody that's going to sit on this Road Commission board.
Okay, I guess this is another part of that. What do you bring to this commission that will make it a more effective organization?
Part of it is having served previously on the board for 2 years. I do know what the challenges are. I understand the funding source. I know that the Road Commission board, we should be setting policy, goals, and guidelines for the Road Commission staff to.
Okay.
You mentioned, hi, how are you? You mentioned that you were previously on the Road Commission. What accomplishment during that time frame are you most proud of, and what part did you play in that accomplishment?
The largest was the funding of the $4 million with the bond issue between the county commissioners and the road commissioners to improve, like I said, 35 miles of road that was in pretty bad shape at that point in time and needed something to be done.
You're obviously aware of the benefits that road commissioners
I am.
receive. Do you plan on accepting the health care benefits?
I would have to look at them and review them. It all depends. I think that everybody that sits on a board should be equal. So if everybody is getting something, then I think there should be, and maybe there's a trade-off, but maybe it's something different. But I think that everybody deserves to be treated equal, yes.
Okay. Did you accept them last time when you were on the
I
board?
did.
Okay. Do you currently attend road commission meetings?
I haven't attended since I left the board in December of 2007.
Okay. What did you think of the categorization of the road commission receiving a windfall and spending it on
I'm
raises?
sorry, say that again?
What did you think of the categorization of the road commission receiving a windfall and spending it on raises? Did you think that that was an accurate categorization?
You mean as far as the millage itself?
The news that was just prior to the millage, about a month or two before.
About the funds that became all available? I think that most of that was a Record Eagle problem. I think the road commission didn't know that all of a sudden they were going to get an insurance rebate in that large amount of money. The issue of giving raises to the administrative staff and the other items that they received was in that budget and talked to prior to that money being all of a sudden kicked back as a rebate. So them issues were already on the table.
So with the funding difficulties of the local roads, particularly the local roads that service large population, what would you do or suggest to address those difficulties?
I think the biggest resource we have is going back and ask for a millage, but I don't think you go and ask for a millage without better educating the public before you do that. I think the public doesn't know where the funds come that the road commission operates from.
Were you familiar with the amount of the road millage that was going to go to local roads or the amount that was going to go to primary roads? Had this millage passed?
I didn't know the percentages, no. As to the percent of how much goes into the local road and how much goes towards the primary road, you mean?
Right.
I don't know the percentages. To me, I travel the majority of this county. Probably in a 2-month period, I'll see probably every township. So to me, it didn't make any difference as long as all the roads are being addressed.
Okay. Last question on the planning commission. I mentioned earlier that they have a kind of a ad hoc road group that's looking at some of the design.
Local design professionals?
Yes.
Mhm.
Would you be receptive to taking a look at any suggested changes that they have with respect
I
to
would.
that?
I'd be willing to look at that, absolutely.
Thank you.
What role do you think public input should have on your job as a road commission?
I have no problem with public input. I think it's a good thing. I think that the public, if they have an issue or want to ask a question of why something is done, I think that if they come and ask the road commission, they should be addressed and heard and understood, and hopefully we can give them an answer.
Anybody else? Larry?
Neil, you presently sit on any other boards or committees at this time?
I do. I am the past president of the Michigan Society of Professional Surveyors. It's a state board. I served as president in 2007, and I will be going off that board in February.
Is that the only one?
It is at this time. I'm an event director for the Cherry Festival, but that's...
Okay, thank you.
One of the things, and you said it, and the gentleman before you said it, that we didn't educate the people in regard to the millage. Are you aware that we could use no staff time or monies from the road commission or from this board to help educate the public. So the opportunity to educate the public of how we were going to do this had to come from citizen groups.
I understand we can't give time to that, but I don't know how you get the Record Eagle to give us a
figure that out,
better
let me know, will ya?
understanding.
Ross?
Are you in favor of the implementation of complete streets policies where appropriate?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I said, are you in favor of the implementation of complete streets policies where they're appropriate?
I'm not sure exactly what that is. I didn't see that. So I'd have to be able to read the entire thing before I could give you a clear answer whether or not I support it.
Okay, thank you.
Who should set the priorities of the road commission? The road commission, staff, townships, the public?
I think the priority should be set by the road commission.
That's it.
That's it? Anybody else? Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you very much.
Next is Mark McKellar.
Evening, Mark.
Evening.
Hi, Mark. If we get punchy, it's because we've been here since 7:30 this
I know, my knee's locked up, so
Feels
I can
like
hardly
it.
walk up there. I don't know how you
Kinda
guys
seems
did
like
it.
it's been a kind of a day. Mark, tell me how you see the responsibility of a road commissioner in regard to the day-to-day operations of the road commission.
Actually, I don't see a board member being involved in the day-to-day operations of the road commission. That's why we hire a manager. I think the role of the board is to set policy, advise, to work with the executive management team. And the management team's going to bring issues to light, you'd hope, to the board, so the board can examine a policy and basically make a decision in terms of direction or course or what should be done.
Thank you.
What would you do to further enhance the relationship between the road commission, township, villages, and other local units of government?
Well, I think the board members would have a responsibility to go to each township with, through rotation, passive rotation. There has to be representation at the table at each one of these townships or city or, village. I think it's important that, we talked a little bit about the communication. There's somewhat of a role that I think the board member has to communicate with other government bodies. That's advocacy. And I think that goes a long ways in terms of communication about what's currently happening with funding and budgeting, what's happening with asking for millages, what's going on down at the local level in that local community. That board member can bring it back to the board of the road commission. Of course, that information can be conveyed back up to the county board as well. But I think that's a big part of it right there, Larry.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mark,
Oh, Larry?
what do you think the number one priority of the road commission should be?
Well, I think the number one priority of the road commission is safe, secure travel in our county. How we accomplish that is the question. I think the direction comes from the board working with the executive management team and the staff and community input. The priorities are a moving target. They are going to change. You have to set a strategic plan, though, based around your budget. But you have to have the flexibility to go back and adjust if there's issues happening in the county. So I think for me to say what singularly would be the number one priority, I would say is communication amongst each one of those bodies and, of course, with the local governments, tying it together. But, I would say that we're in a situation where we're kind of a critical mass, though, on maintenance of the roads. And I think that's ultimately what we've got to look at today with the limited budget we have. But again, that can change. That can change with budget, conditions of the roads, funding from the federal government and state government.
What experience do you have in road building and/or road maintenance?
Zero. I'll be totally honest. I don't have a degree. I don't have experience with asphalt, concrete, or anything like that. What I bring to the board is different experience than that. I can't bring that to the board.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, Russ.
Did you support the road millage, and why do you think it failed?
I did support the road millage. I think it failed. It was kind of cataclysmic. It's a matter of timing. We got a federal, state, local economic downturn. People don't want to pay $75 to $150 a year anymore out of their pocketbook. I think it became primarily a pocketbook concern for people. In a good economic time, people are willing to maybe put out that kind of money for 4 years or so. I think the timing of the millage, the asking of the millage with the Record Eagle article was the killing point. I don't think that gave the road commission, the board, anybody really a chance to turn the tide on that, even with the rebuttal, you might say, in the paper. But, it was political from that standpoint. So, and I think generally people, the majority of them just decided to do it out of their pocketbook and said no.
Mark, are you pleased with the direction of the road commission presently? And if not, what would you change?
Well, the question is, are you talking about the road commission or are you talking about the road commission board, Chris? Different things. But I think if you want me to lump it together, I will, okay? I think they've had challenges. Historically, road commissions have always had challenges, good times or bad. I'm not absolutely sure the direction. I don't see a statement. I don't see a definitive strategic plan. It's not been presented to me. I've scoured the website. It's not there. I've attended meetings since September, and I've watched many on television. Went to the meeting this morning on the budgeting issue, $1.4 million hole. Pretty scary. I think what I heard this morning, was there is a plan on the table being presented from a different way of doing planning for a budget, which was news to my ears because maybe what's been going on hasn't been effective. So I don't know. Direction, I couldn't put my finger on it. I don't sit on the inside. I don't have that perspective from the outside. I don't see it laid out, Chris. I don't see it there. That's my concern.
You?
Okay, Mark, why should we appoint you to this position?
Bruce, I bring a lot of different, I think, talent and experience to the table. I've been here 25 years. This is home. I got 3 natives now that drive these roads. I'm concerned and passionate about the safety of the people in this room and the people we all love. I've got a lot of experience on boards, sitting on boards and how they process. I bring financial budget experience, vast amounts of financial budget experience, executive planning experience. I'm on a number of boards that affect our community and have been in the past. So I think I bring a kind of a more objective perspective to it. I don't have that critical experience like Larry had asked about in terms of construction. I hope to be a quick study. I don't know if I'm going to keep my mouth shut or my ears open, but I plan on being a quick study and catching up real quick on a financial, because that's the issue at hand, and then keeping people safe. So.
Okay, and the second part, you've touched on a lot of the points, but what do you bring to this commission that will make it a more effective organization?
My experience, Bruce, is you never get anything going in with sour grapes or any type of an agenda. I've learned when I was a young guy that I'd come in pretty brash and come in swinging, and it didn't really do me much good. What my hope is that I'm going to come in, I'm going to listen for a while, and start being rather effective in the sense that I don't want to, how do I want to phrase this? A more balanced approach to things, looking at things with an objective viewpoint so that we have a more of a mediation going on, so we can find common ground, so that we have a positive outcome for our citizens. That's kind of where I'm at. I'd like to be able to, I can bring that in. I've been in many tables where I've been the mediator. Can do it again.
Hey, thank you.
Yep.
Hi.
I bet.
Will you be accepting the health care benefits?
No.
Okay. Could you tell me a little bit more about your attendance at road commission meetings and how you're following road commission issues?
Well, I started following road commission back when Mike Dillenbeck got his head handed to him over the Hammond-Hartman Bridge. Those of us remember that. That was like, wow, there's a road commission and there's something going on here. So that's when I started back paying attention, real sporadically over the vast number of years going into the meetings. I've been watching them on TV when I can, but since September I've attended the meetings. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the budget meeting this morning, special budget meeting, which I mean, you talk about community input, there's a special budget meeting, it's publicly announced, 6 people in the room besides the board. The only people that come to the road commission meetings are generally people that have a guardrail in their front yard they're unhappy about, or something else, they're unhappy. The general citizen doesn't show, but that's my experience. It's been interesting watching them for the last 3 months, 2-3 months, and quite a dynamic. And I think I can lend some good mediation to that and some understanding. So.
Okay. Do you think the categorization of the road commission receiving a windfall and spending it on raises, do you think that was accurate?
Oh, absolutely not. It was an inaccuracy. I mean, yes, they did get money that they did not anticipate. My experience on boards, being in finance, you budget pretty conservatively, and if something happens like that, you know, you're lucky that you're not on the other side of it, being short. How you choose to allocate those funds, that's different. I wasn't sitting in the position or the decision-making chair to determine how those funds would be spent, so it's really hard for me to sit back and be real critical of that. I think when you look at the total amount of money that was spent on the equipment and the raises and so on, it's hard to buy right now when people are getting barely any raises or let go on their jobs. But if the people are doing a good job at all fronts, and that was put on the back burner until other things were taken care of, you know, I could support something like that if it was justifiable. But when you look at the total amount of money, Beth, I don't know how many, honestly, how many potholes would actually be repaired and how much would be covered on a road. It is not that, it wasn't a deal breaker in that essence, that kind of money. But I mean, you have to be prudent with every dime.
Were you familiar with the amount, how the road millage would be broken out if it were successful among local roads and primary roads?
Not percentage-wise, not hard numbers. I know that all of it was intended, you know, for primary road use is what my understanding.
Okay. And many people have mentioned the fact of better communicating, you know, what the funds would be used for. And that's easy to say, but how would you have, do you feel that it should be better communicated? And if so, how would you have done that?
Yeah, I've got a pretty good amount of time in public relations, media relations. I think the Road Commission is now trying to get ahead of the curve on the media relations, which is good. When you look at the website, some of the press releases, the ticker that just came out the other day from the DC Business News, you know, basically letting people know more about what's involved in the winter operations, which is the biggest part of the budget, besides human resources. I think Sonny hit it on the head that there's some legal issues as to how you really can communicate that. I don't know what what Act 51 really, back in 1951, when they passed that. I don't know what the legal aspect of what you can do. I know that in my business, I deal with compliance and legal stuff. I write it daily. I deal with this stuff with legislators daily. And heck, half the time we can't even promote our products the way we want because there's laws. So, and I spend a great deal of time trying to determine what we can and cannot do through compliance. So I think we have to do more, and we have to work with groups like TC Talus. We have to deal with the bikers. We have to deal with groups that use our infrastructure and get them on board because they're the ones that's going to support us in a bigger pattern. Maybe we can, and because we don't have the funding to do it legally and the resources in terms of people.
Thank you.
The only question left is, what do you think about the importance of public input?
Dick, I think it's great. You know, I used to come back, I live in Green Lake Township, and I used to go to the township board meetings quite often and got involved from that standpoint and worked on the master plan when it was built in Green Lake Township. And had I not shown up, my wife not been involved in it, we had no input on the future of our community we lived in. I think we need more public input. The fact is, we can't always address every issue that's brought up, Dick. That's the issue.
That's why we have to go out here with a handgun to drive people in to watch us.
Yeah, you know, that's right, you know.
Anybody got another one?
Do you presently sit on any other boards or committees?
Yeah, it's kind of listing them off, Larry. I sit on a statewide board for the Michigan Credit Union League, Legislative and Government Affairs. I'm a lobbyist. I sat on a chapter of Credit Unions Northwest Michigan on that board as well. I sit on the West Shore Medical Center down in Manistee on their foundation for fundraising. I sit on the TBA ISD Career Tech Center Advisory Board for their curriculum and academic programs. I spend quite a bit of time with the Grand Vision, been involved with the Grand Vision since the beginning. I had a choice not too long ago to go to transportation or go over to the energy group. I went over to the energy group, been involved in that for 18 months. The reason I did that is it was more in line with what I needed to do for my employer in terms of, you know, my time spent with that, although energy's been getting closer and closer to transportation. And it's very interesting to see that that's an organization that could help out in terms of the media content. So yes, I do sit on a number of different ones, which time-wise, they're pretty spread out, and I balance them very well.
The first three you listed, they're work-related?
Yes, as a matter of fact, they are. They are.
One more.
Would you support the implementation of complete streets policies where appropriate in the county?
Ross, I have to admit, I don't exactly know, but anything that's come out of Lansing in the last 4 months, I wouldn't vote for it. So, you know, it's, as we're looking at a lame duck, I'm not really sure, you know, what.
Well, even our local state representative did vote for it.
Is that supposed to influence me, Ross?
You were blaming it on the lame ducks and.
No, it's just.
I'm not trying to embarrass anybody. I've asked everybody else the same question, so I figured I'd just, put it out there. Thanks.
Yeah.
There would have been 7 of us at the road commission meeting this morning, except our main meeting was 4.5 hours long, so.
No, I got lucky I had to cut out after 45 minutes anyways, but I did get a handle on what was going on with the budget and the whole, so. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John Nelson.
Hello.
Hello, John.
Hi, John. You've heard the question. How do you see your position as a road commissioner in reference to the day-to-day operations of the road commission?
First of all, I'd like to say how impressed I am with the quality of the previous applicants. I've sat on a number of commissions and boards that have a management system like the road commission does. I was elected city commissioner for 9 years, a school board member for another 8. and all worked with either a superintendent or a city manager. So the road commission sets policy, sets direction, creates a long-range plan. Day-to-day operation should be left to the administrator.
John, what would you do to further enhance the relationship between the road commission, townships, villages, and governmental units?
Number one, or I don't know if it's number one, but one way we could do that for sure is that the road commission should have a regular agenda item report at the TC Tallis meeting. At TC Tallis, I sit on TC Tallis, have for now for 7 years. And TC Tallis is represented by a number of townships in the TC Tallis region and the city and a couple villages. And so a regular report at TC Tallis would be very important. Secondarily, I think we could, especially if you expand to 5, you could divide up the townships and the villages and the city by the 5 road commissioners and reach out to them by going to their meeting, use a questionnaire perhaps prior to meeting with them, and set up meetings with either the planning board or the trustees or the city commission and talk about their issues and their view of what transportation needs are for their jurisdiction.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
John, what do you see as the number one priority for the road commission?
Maintenance. Safety and maintenance. We need to maintain our roads, our rural roads. We need to maintain our primary roads. Maintenance is the key issue, and financing that, of course, is the problem, but maintenance is the key issue. Also, I think, and I'll mention this probably in answer to a couple other questions, I think the road commission needs to actively support the grand vision and the direction of the grand vision in regard to transportation, and bring into it the whole idea of land use. I think the road commission has been too much focused in the past on just moving automobiles. And I think it needs to focus a little bit more on and bring into the discussion land use issues. So that's another, and I do support complete streets, and I am familiar with complete streets. So that's another, I think, as we develop roads, as we maintain our roads, and when we maintain our roads, maybe we add other lanes for alternative transportation, movement, and so forth. I do support complete streets in that regard.
Do you have any experience in road building and or maintenance?
Directly, no, but indirectly, yes. As a city commissioner, I had direct responsibility for the public works in the town in which I served. And I did serve in Maine on the governor's Regional Transportation Advisory Committee for the Maine Department of Transportation. So I had direct input into maintaining and building roads. But actual engineering and on-the-ground experience, I would say no.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
Hi, John.
And Ross.
Did you support the road millage, and why do you think it failed?
Okay, first of all, let me preface that by saying I have never, that I can remember, not supported public infrastructure, whether it be schools, roads, whatever. In this particular case, I did not support the effort, and I voted against it. And I think it's because the road commission, in my opinion, was tone deaf from a public relations standpoint, and that's why it failed. I truly believe, in talking to the people and my neighbors and friends, people understand clearly the financial problems, the gas tax, et cetera. I don't think it's an educational issue. I think that it was an issue of the road commission doing some things that basically turned the public off. And people basically had a protest vote.
John, are you pleased with the present direction of the road commission? If not, how would you change it?
Public relations is something that I think they need to do a much better job at. When one of the road commissioners said when the millage went out and raises were given, or when the millage was going to be on the ballot and raises were given, said, well, cavalierly in my mind said, well, I guess the public will tell us what they think about that. Well, they did. They did tell them what they thought about that. So public relations is a big thing. As far as roads, I think they're doing a reasonably good job on trying to maintain the roads as best they can. The connection from Keystone to Hammond was a key project, and in my opinion, a Grand Vision project. It supports the whole idea of Grand Vision with east-west connectivity. So as far as roads, I think Mary's doing a really good job. I think the road commissioners are good people, but I think they've been tone deaf, to be honest, to the public.
Okay, John, why should we appoint you to this position?
I'm committed. I have experience. I've been working now since I moved back. I grew up here in Traverse City and moved back from Maine about 11, 12 years ago now, and in those 12 years I've been completely involved. I was at the beginning of the Grand Vision. I would say that there's probably no one that has more time into the Grand Vision process than I do. I'm a trained mediator. I'm a trained community facilitator, and I would bring that to the table as well. And the other thing I bring to the table is experience in land use planning. I sat on the Garfield Township Planning Commission for 9 years now, so I understand land use planning. I sit on TC Talus and have for 6 years, so I understand the relationship between land use planning. Talus is not just about transportation, it's about land use, and it ought to be. So I've sat on that board, so I understand the relationship between land use and how land use drives transportation and how transportation affects land use. So I bring planning to the table. I bring the ability to reach consensus without confrontation.
Okay. And also, what do you bring to this commission that will make it a more effective organization?
Well, I just would repeat myself that I am a trained mediator. I'm a trained community facilitator. I'm not afraid to confront someone if I think they're off base, and I'm not afraid to advocate for positions that I think are important, but also I understand the process of consensus building. And when the Grand Vision started, there was a lot of turmoil at the beginning of that, a lot of friction. And it was my suggestion that the initial group that was formed, which was around 20 to 30 people, that the process used in reaching decisions be a consensus decision-making process. There was no hierarchy there. A lot of people scoffed at that idea, but it worked.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi, Beth.
Will you be accepting the health care benefits?
I will not.
Okay. Do you currently attend meetings, and how do you stay apprised of the road commission issues?
Currently, no, but I've been attending road commission meetings for 10 years, off and on. Through TC Talus, I'm well aware of what the road commission is doing, I believe, because there's a seat at the table for the road commission, and in the Grand Visioning process, I've been to the last 1,000, I don't know, technical committee meetings, trying to put together the final documents from the consultant in the Grand Vision, and the road commission is a seat at the table there, so I'm well aware of what the road commission is doing.
Okay. What did you think of the categorization of the road commission receiving a windfall of additional funds and spending it on raises? Did you think that that was accurate? Did you follow it enough to
I followed it, and to be honest, I don't know if it was accurate or not accurate, but as a perception to the public is that there was something not right.
Were you familiar with how the road millage funds would be spent?
My yes and no. You to prior speakers, you talked about primary versus local. My perception is that it was, whether it be primary or local, those are all in our local area, and it would be spent on those local roads.
And I think I'm good. Thank you.
What do you think about public input as far as the road commission is concerned?
There's been no one more enamored, if you will, with and supportive of public input than myself. The Grand Vision, which I am a great supporter and advocate for, had over 12 to 15,000 people in this region involved in inputting to land use and transportation issues. That the outcome of that should be something that the Road Commission should take in hand and use and support and advocate for because that already has a great deal of public input. As far as road commission meetings themselves, they meet at 7:30 in the morning, or 7, 8, whatever in the morning. I don't know how many people are going to get to those meetings that have workaday jobs, et cetera. So when the public does come, you ought to absolutely support them being there, because they made a great effort to do it. And to the extent possible, I would try to arrange meetings, whether it be the regular meeting or special meetings, so that it's available at a time and a place where people can come and comment on road commission issues. Might be evening meetings, I don't know.
John, how many boards and/or committees do you presently sit on?
Well, as I said before, I sit on the TC Talus board. I have for now, I can't remember, 6 years. I sit on the Garfield Township Planning Commission, and I have for 9 years. I sit on the board of the Northern Michigan Environmental Action Council, and I have for 10 years. I work at the Watershed Center in Grand Traverse Bay, and I was on that board until I became staff as the Grand Traverse Bay keeper.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Quick question. Have you ever dealt on any particular issue personally with the road commission? As far as,
Personally
affecting
with
as a property
road
owner or anything like that?
As a property owner? Not to my recollection, no, I don't think, no.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
He never complained about his road.
No plowing of his mailbox.
Okay, thank you, John.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last one is Robert Schaefer.
Last but not least, huh? I guess I have the position of one of the guys from going home. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
First, second, last, we're going to ask the same questions.
Yeah.
So it's the way we try to get a true assessment. How do you see your responsibility as a road commissioner relative to the day-to-day operations of the road commission?
Well, much like I think you've heard from the other folks, it's an oversight role. It's a role to help them develop their objectives and to act as a resource when they need it as a group. I don't see us, trying to run their business day to day at all. That's what their job is to do. So I think it's an oversight role, it's a goal-setting role, and it's an evaluation role to make sure that things are going the way they're supposed to. Once those goals are set.
All right. What would you do to further enhance the relationship between the road commission, township villages, and just say governmental units?
Well, again, I think you've heard, you're going to hear from me something somewhat similar to what you've heard, and I've had a little bit of experience working with the Whitewater Township Road Planning Subcommittee. That's a committee that I worked on for a little over a year, was appointed by the Planning Commission. And the first thing we did was we got involved with a request from the county to prioritize our needs, kind of as a precursor to the millage that was voted on. So this was back like a year ago, you may recall that. So that was the first project I got involved with, and I really felt like we were operating in a vacuum for a while, and so Mary came out and spent some time with us at a meeting to help educate us on what's the context around what we're being asked to do and how does that all fit. And I walked away from that saying to myself, my goodness, this person has got a full-time job, is probably up to her ears in alligators, and she spent like 2 hours with us trying to educate us to do this project for the county. And so I walked away with that first encounter with quite a bit of respect and for, I guess, the care that they took in trying to get their job done right. So when I looked at all of this and then going on from there and watching what's been going on, I think communication and input is crucial. I looked at that whole road millage thing back a year ago, and I kind of saw it the way we've seen it from some of the others that have expressed it. It was like the perfect storm. I didn't think it would have a chance to pass, just given our economic conditions and a lack of communication. So I think communication, goal setting, public input, those things are important.
What's the number one priority, in your opinion, of the road commission?
I think to start down the road of kind of communicating and gathering input, listening to what people want, figuring out ways to develop, a statement, a mission statement, and a goal statement for whatever the right period of time is, so that you can go back and try to get some funds where they're needed to complete the projects that need to get completed. I too was somewhat baffled a little bit by asking people for money without a list. In my career, I'm used to, I approved residential projects for 10 years in my job before I retired, and we acted as a bank committee. So we wanted to understand the project, we wanted to understand the return on that project, the cash flows, what were the assumptions, what was behind estimates, things like that, so that we knew exactly what the people were getting money to do. And I think, that kind of business acumen needs to be brought to more of the government side as well. And I think you're seeing that, from people generally with the way they're voting. So I think a lot can be done there.
Do you have any experience in road building and/or?
No, sir, I don't. My experience with development and construction and things like that, again, was as an approval of funds. And so as a course of that, I looked at a lot of environmental reports, a lot of soils reports, looked at the assumptions, questioned people on their assumptions, what was behind the assumptions, and really wrote new policies for our company before I left. But I don't have experience building them and being on site and things like that.
Thank you.
And obviously I've asked this question. Did you support the road millage, and why do you think it failed?
I did not, Russ, for the reasons that I kind of just expressed. I believe if you're going to ask people for money in a bad economic time, which, I think the timing was kind of bad, and the sentiment of the public got worse as the year went on, there has to be, a plan. What is it that we're going to use the money for? Kind of almost a list of things that have been decided upon, and with the estimates and the time frame over which they'll be accomplished. I think if communication is gathered from the public on the front end of that, you got a better chance to make that happen. And again, the timing was tough, so I'm not sure it would have passed under the best of circumstances, but maybe it would have had a better chance.
Okay. Do you support the implementation of Complete Streets programs?
I'm not familiar with what that all entails, so I couldn't honestly answer that question, Russ. I'd have to get involved in that and understand it better.
Okay, thank you.
Are you pleased with the present direction of the Road Commission? If not, what would you change?
Well, I tried to find out what the direction was, again, by scouring the website and finding out, well, what are the goals, what's the statement? I couldn't find anything either. And maybe that's a good thing, because I'm kind of the new person in town, literally. I'm the beneficiary of a lot of the roads here over the years since I was a child. We vacationed up here. My dream was always to come up here and live. And, I'm kind of here now. So I think the roads are a huge asset to the community and the region. Without that, what do you have, to get people around safely and in an efficient manner? So I want to try to help make a difference. I'm passionate about this. That's where I'm at.
Okay, Robert, why should we appoint you to this position?
Well, I think I kind of bring a different viewpoint because I haven't lived here my whole life. I vacationed here. I love the area. I'm passionate about it, as I just said, and I think my experience is much different, maybe than some of the other candidates, and we all have. I'm impressed with the candidates that spoke before me. My experience is, I have a bigger company experience. I started out as a CPA. I spent 15 years in public accounting doing auditing and things like that. I wanted a career change. I wanted to get into business. I did that. I So I went to a big company as a controller. I didn't want to do that forever, so I did it for 7 years, and then I asked to get into operations. I had absolutely no qualifications to get into operations, but I was given the chance. And, I've learned along the way that you do have to listen sometimes and learn before you can speak, and you have to kind of understand before you can be understood by other people. So my whole game plan would be, I think I'm a quick study. I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not afraid to learn. I would jump in with 2 feet and hope to make a difference as soon as I could. But my experience is a little different. I'm detail-oriented, but I'm very strategic, and I understand that things aren't black and white, but I am fact-based. So I make decisions based on judgments, based on facts, and collaboration with a team. I'm a team player. I always have been. You're only as good as your team.
Okay, and then the second part of this, what do you bring to this commission that would make it a more effective organization?
Well, I think my experience as a business person, and someone that has always worked as a team and yet wants to make a difference. So I'm not afraid. I'm very direct. I'm not afraid to ask questions, and but yet I understand there has to be compromise and there has to be joint decisions that are made, and then you get on board. You may disagree with parts of it, but once you just set a direction, you have to get on board and make it happen the best you can.
Thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
Do you plan on accepting the health care benefits?
I don't know, Beth. I'm not familiar with, what they are, so I would have to take a look at that.
Okay. Have you attended recently road commission meetings, and how have you kept up on the road commission issues?
No, I haven't. I kind of thought about some of this stuff, and I decided I just wanted to come in cold, to be honest with you. I didn't want any preconceived notions. The work that I did in Whitewater Township kind of gave me some opinions as to, what's happening and how it works. And I thought about maybe attending a couple meetings, but to be honest with you, I couldn't. I had some personal commitments downstate that I had to be down there for. So I wasn't able to.
Okay. Were you familiar with how the road millage was going to be spent with respect to local and primary roads?
From my recollection on that, we did have some discussions on that, and the one thing that stuck in my mind was that the communities would not necessarily get back the dollars they raised in the millage. And so that could be a problem, if you knew that. Like, if Whitewater Township contributed, X thousand dollars, they might get less than X thousand dollars back in terms of those dollars that were raised because of priorities. And so beyond that, I didn't have a clear understanding as to how it was going to be spent. Again, my whole focus would be, I want to know exactly what the projects are and why they are that.
Okay. And would you speak a little bit about land use planning and transportation with respect to context-sensitive design? Is that something you're supportive of?
Well, I think it's important. One of the things that I took a look at, again, working with Whitewater, was, how do we preserve, the entryway into kind of Acme Township, if you will, coming down M72 with the hills and the trees and the beauty of the area. Do you want big box retail busting that all up? How do you control the land uses, and then how do you deal with the roads surrounding that? So I think that has to be a component, yes. And we dealt with that a lot in residential development.
Thank you.
What do you think about public input being important?
Well, I think there has to be some because the public is paying the bill ultimately through taxes. And the trick, I think, or the challenge of that is that, how do you gather that in a fashion that's efficient, and given some of the constraints that Sonny mentioned before about, funding that kind of stuff, how do you get it? And I think they're just, maybe we need to sit down and try to be creative. Maybe the Record Eagle can be turned into an ally somehow. I don't know. I just, I think you have to kind of look at things from scratch. I don't know,
Thank you. Larry?
Robert, do you presently sit on any other boards and/or committees?
Not currently, I don't, no.
Okay, thank you.
I think you can see from my resume, I have been on boards before.
Right.
I've never, kind of my philosophy on that was, if I'm going to be on a board, I want to have time to spend on it to make a difference. And so the boards I have been on, I never was on more than 2 at a time. One of the things I did that took up a lot of my time, and it wasn't really, it was our community subdivision board in a condominium complex I lived in downstate. And the developer really didn't finish a lot of the infrastructure properly and was turning over the association to the residents, which wasn't completely built out. And so I led a team on that and met with the developers and worked through with them, a settlement agreement without getting attorneys involved. It took a while, but we got them to come to the table and to fix things and give us funds to properly complete the community. So that was a collaborative effort I did work on, and yet it was very time consuming, but it benefited the community. So.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now, how long are we going to be here? She wants to take a break.
Yeah, let's
We
take a
got her
5-minute break.
before 9, can't we? Let's just move on.
Yeah.
We can be done by 9. Yes, sir. Was your finger up?
Are we
again?
going to take a break, or are we going to continue?
She says no, not if we can finish by 9.
Okay, I would like to make a motion that tonight we appoint Carl Brown to fill the Hooper's vacancy effective 1/1/11, which is a 6-year term. It starts 1/1/11 through December 31st of 2016.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Discussion?
Guess the only discussion that I would have would be, to reaffirm to the other candidates that we will be moving forward with a public hearing to expand the road commission to 5 members.
Larry?
So don't get disappointed yet.
No, stay close.
With regard to your nomination of Carl Brown, I was impressed with his interview in terms of his knowledge of roads and his ability to have time to serve. And, from a geographical standpoint, I don't think Fife Lake has ever had anybody on the road commission, and I think they would just be pleased as punch to have representation on the road commission. And, they don't get a lot of attention down there, and I think this would be a strong message on our part that we care about South County, we care about the Fife Lake area. And I know he's right on the border of Fife Lake and Paradise, so I think it would be a real good gesture on our part to put him on.
I would agree with Larry. Larry represents the majority of South County townships, and I probably represent the majority of the other ones. And we've had some serious discussions. We attend the township meetings every month and the village meeting down in Kingsley. But we've had some serious discussions in the past about no representation from South County. And I think with Carl's experience, Carl was an applicant 2 years ago, I believe, last time. And I thought he did a swell job there. And I thought he done a good job tonight. And I think to replace Mr. Hooper on the board, I think Carl would be an appropriate choice.
Anyone else?
I think that all the applicants were, and I'm not just saying that, were standout applicants, and I appreciate all of you applying. My opinion is Carl Brown is an absolutely qualified candidate. However, I feel his background is awfully similar to already a current commissioner on there. And I would look to some of the other backgrounds of business backgrounds of some of the other applicants. So I won't be supporting your motion for that reason.
Well, due to the fact that we're going to discuss the possibility of going to 5, that gives me a little bit more comfort level to go to the direction that you're going in terms of hopefully if we go to another one or two more nominations that we can look at someone with that kind of a background. So, I mean, that's where I'm coming from. But, you know, you certainly have your opinion on the first round, so.
And also, too, the Planning Commission recently passed a resolution or a letter
Yeah.
to this Board of Commissioners asking that specifically when we appoint for the Road Commission that we look with someone with some land use experience and background for the Road Commission. So,
For clarification, if we go to 5, it'll happen when?
We're going to have a public hearing.
After 28 days?
After 28 days from tonight, which will be December 17th at the Ways and Means Committee.
Actually, 15th.
Well, the 15th is the date, the 7th, we get a couple days to play with, so.
Right.
We, at the Ways and Means Committee, we will hold a public hearing. At that point, we can pass a resolution to expand the Road Commission to 5 members. At that time, we can appoint, at that time, or at the Board of Commissioners meeting the end of December, we can appoint the other 2 commissioners that would be seated for January 1st of 2011.
But
And
we
we can do
need
this-
to make that motion later in the
What?
meeting.
We can do this without further interviews.
We wouldn't have to do further interviews.
Anything else? I was just going to say that I think that the terms would be staggered that we would appoint them for.
Yeah, we need to talk about that.
Yeah.
After the public
I think
hearing.
we have to check that with the legislation by which the terms are set.
Well, hopefully, before long, we get a vote that says we can have them elected
By
by
district.
district.
Hold your breath.
And I guess that's
I'm working
one-
on it.
I guess that's one thing that we would point out when we have discussion about appointing a representative of South County. This board has went on record repeatedly saying that we would like to have road commissioners elected, but we want them elected by geographical areas throughout the county, so as the county as a whole is represented.
By district, if you will, yeah.
And, so far legislation does not allow that.
I think the candidates we interviewed tonight did an excellent job. And my motion is certainly not a reflection on any of them. But like Sonny just stated, we've gone on record, and I think Carl fits the mold, if you will, of the type of person we would be looking from South County. And we, I believe, will be expanding the Road Commission to 5 members, and the other members that we interviewed tonight, I think were all good, strong members, and certainly I would be an advocate of selecting the other 2 from the people that we interviewed tonight.
although I've always been in favor of going to 5 commissioners, tried to do that, what was it, a year and a half ago, that didn't work, and we're presuming an outcome in some of the
It's
statements.
just for discussion.
And I think that this appointment should be made on the fact that there are 3 road commission positions right now, and there is 1 vacancy right now. Dennis had a comment?
I just want to point out, as part of this discussion, I discussed this with Chris Kramer today, and also you heard in public comment an individual who would like to be considered with future appointments. Chris has said she's heard from several other people that are interested if the board expands to interview for that position, so I just wanted you to be aware. Chris and I talked about this today, and our recommendation to you is that we open it back up and that you take more applicants and you let others apply, because there are some other people that have indicated a desire to apply if the board goes to 5. So that's just, we wanted you to have that information. It's your decision, but we wanted you to be aware that there are others out there.
But we don't have to re-interview.
That's correct.
We don't have
Anything
to
else?
re-interview.
Nope, ready to go.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Hooper?
Yes.
Brent?
No.
Police?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes. No, you wanted to...
Yes,
as a-
I would like to make a motion to, hold on a minute, let me get my notes here, say this right. I would like to make a motion to schedule a public hearing at the Ways and Means meeting of December 15th, 2010, to propose a change of the number of county road commissioners from 3 to 5.
Support.
Moved and supported, discussion.
Yes, during that discussion, I would like to have some information as far as the cost of each road commissioner currently, what potentially the cost would be for 2 additional road commissioners, assuming, that they do accept some of the benefits that are optional, and to have that financial information in front of us so we know the results of our potential decision.
Well, you have,
I think that would be.
we have 5 weeks, so.
I think that would be pertinent to find out before we pass on it, but not, as far as public hearing is concerned, we don't need it.
Who seconded the motion?
Oh, the whole gang of them down there.
Pick one.
Pick
Okay,
one.
all right.
All right.
I don't know who it was.
We all said at the same time.
Anything else? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Second opportunity for public hearing.
Public.
Does anybody have anything else? All right, public comment? We're tired of talking. Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
All gone now.
All right.
Meeting adjourned. Say goodnight, Vicki. Oh, what I need is a roll lady.
I'm sorry, I don't have any.
Oh, I don't put something like